All right. The four horsemen of the apocalypse are not the end times of the entire world, but the signs of the collapse of an empire. Um, Basically, we have, a people or an empire becomes mighty, right? This leads to arrogance and hubris. From this, they decide conquest becomes their natural way, right? They decide they're the best, so they decide to try and conquer everyone else because they are superior, right? So then comes conquest, and from conquest, obviously, war begins. From war, famine arises. After famine, arises, we have death that abounds because between the war and the famine, there's just so many ways people can die. So death abounds. And by this, the four horsemen appear and ride across the land until change is enacted and no winner has been found, right? So basically, what I'm saying with this is if I read, maybe I'm not going to read it. Let's see, we have, we'll read it. Then I saw when the Lamb broke one of the seven seals, and I heard one of the four living creatures saying, as with a voice of thunder, "Come." I looked, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer. When he broke the second seal, I heard the second living creature saying, "Come." And another, a red horse, went out, and to him who sat on it, it was granted to take peace from earth, and that men would slay one another, and a great sword was given to him. When he broke the third seal, I heard the third living creature saying, "Come." I looked, and behold, a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard something like a voice in the center of the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, but do not damage the oil and the wine." When the Lamb opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. Its rider was named Death, and Hades was following close behind him. They were given power over a fourth of the earth to kill by sword, famine, and plague, and by the wild beasts of the earth. Right? And so basically that's the whole four horsemen of the apocalypse. But to me, this sounds like pretty much just what happens. This is just the natural conclusion of every empire that's ever existed. Right? Every empire rises, and as they rise, they become, arrogant, right? And they decide to conquer the land. In some cases, they decide to conquer not necessarily because they just feel like it, but because of out of necessity. Because as they grow in size, they need to grow in resources and space, right? So as they grow in power and they consume more resources, they need to then gather more resources. So this leads to the conquest, right? And so as they go out and they spend all these resources on conquest and war, it naturally leads to a depletion of resources in the main region, which leads to famine, right? This famine then leads to mass death, right? Because you've got all kinds of it's just a terrible state of things. Everything's in chaos, right? So death comes along and all these things roll through. And at the end of it, right, the empire collapses and something new is born, right? But I don't know if you could really say anyone won, right? I don't think you could say that whoever takes over the empire after it falls won that war. Nor can you say the empire that collapsed won, right? So there's just no winners in this cycle, right? It's just starting fresh, right? We're like, oh, okay, all right, game's over. And then you start anew. And so I don't think that this is necessarily saying the end is nigh and we will be seeing the end of the world, but we will be seeing the end of the world as we know it. And it'll be changed. How much it'll be changed is undetermined, but I do think that we are currently living at some state in this. I can definitely see famine on the horizon, because, and not even necessarily just out of a war standpoint, but I just don't see our agricultural methods surviving through any stress, like any level of stress. If the stress is just a little bit too much, I think that the whole system kind of collapses. And when there's no food, everyone's got to eat. That's when the chaos happens, right? Because when people start getting hungry, they start getting desperate. And there's only so much you can do, right? And things are already somewhat bad and expensive. So if it only gets worse, it's just not looking good, right? It's just not looking good. So I really do think this is something to consider, because upon reading this, I really do see some similarities here. It does seem like for a while now we've been in what I would say is the American empire. And being an American, this is my perspective. Maybe this is not the perspective of everyone, but from my perspective, America's been considering themselves, even though it's not official, we have been, basically running the world in theory, right? And so we see ourselves as the great American empire, and we've been, ruling the world for all these years or whatever in theory, right? And now we're starting to get arrogant. We're getting and the hubris is really kicking in, right? And now we're out for conquest, right? Oh, we're taking Greenland. Oh, we're taking, Venezuela. Oh, we're attacking, right? We're doing all these things, right? To me, this is arrogancy. This is hubris, and it shows, in my opinion, desperation. It shows that we are desperate and we are crumbling, and it shows weakness, and it's quite clear to see because we went in with our fancy technology basically, and it didn't work. It didn't work, and I don't think that we expected that to be the case, and I don't know why. I don't know why we didn't have contingency plans, because it seems like we didn't have any contingency plans. It's very bizarre to me. I don't know. I'm not involved with any of this. I don't know what's going on, really. I'm just an outsider looking in. I don't really watch the news too much because I don't know if I can even trust anything that's on the news. However, we have all this going on, and to me, this looks like signs of the quote-unquote apocalypse. However, I don't think it's the end of the world. I do think that it is the death of the United States as a global empire, or whatever it may be. It's not that it's all gonna go down. Everything's gonna be terrible. But I definitely do think that something's got to give here, because everything's kind of screwed up. And so I could be totally wrong about this, but I do see this as a potential here, and I'm not trying to spread doom or anything like that, but I'm just saying it's good to be aware of this kind of stuff and these patterns arising and how they come about, because this is not the first time that this has happened, right? Empires rise and fall throughout history, and again, it's important to know what's happened in the past because it says a lot about where we're going. And any empire that thinks they are untouchable is most certainly going to destroy themselves, because it's just hubris. It's not true, right? And I don't know what the future holds necessarily, but I do think it's good to be aware of these things, because it might be good to look at what the fallout of previous empire collapses looks like. It might give you a good idea of what to expect. But maybe I'm just being maybe I'm just being dramatic here. Maybe everything's fine and it's all under control. However, I'm not very confident. And my reasoning for that is that our government cannot not shut down. To me, if we've had for like the past 3, like, I think government decisions, they've shut down the government. And to me, if a government has to shut down, like, why do we even have, what is our government even doing? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, how can the government shut down? Like, I don't understand that concept. That's just such a bizarre thing. Oh, we can't come to a decision? Well, I guess we'll just do nothing then. Like, what? What? I don't know. I don't know what's going on. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not going to bother trying to figure it out. But I'm just saying, like, things, at the very least, they need significant maintenance. Something's not right here. I'm hearing some weird noises, some clanking. We got to get someone in here to fix it up. It needs a tune-up for sure. So that's just me. I'm just some person, it's like, that's just my opinion. So yeah, peace out.